try that again. Stream.
I mute my end for a second just so I can pull up YouTube as well, and then.
Welcome back to Liberty and Finance. This is a live, actually live, really live Ask the Brokers live stream. If you'd like to ask us questions directly during this hour, please go to YouTube. Make sure you're a subscriber on YouTube. All you got to do is click the little subscribe button, hop into the live chat that's below the video, and you can type your questions for us. We'll be trying to monitor those and get those answered as many as possible during this session. We've already got a question. And oh, by the way, I'm Dunnigan Kaiser, the founder of Liberty and Finance, and my son Kaiser is here as well.
Hi, I'm Kaiser Johnson. That's me you heard talking about how to be pulling up YouTube at the beginning of this. So,
So, everybody, thank you for being here. And if this goes as it typically does, we're going to see an increasing number of participants as we go into the time. So, we've already got some questions that are asked by Joseph. Joseph, it sounds like perhaps you live in Ireland because you're talking about taking delivery of bars that may be restricted by rules in Ireland, value-added tax, etc. It is a challenge. Shipping physical metals internationally always is a bit interesting. For one thing, the rules change from time to time. For another thing, there are different taxes, value-added tax, excise tax, etc. And there are also the interesting security provided by the border guards in the customs area that can vary even within a single country. It can vary from province to province or from state to state, etc. So it can be very challenging, even daunting, to try to get the correct information for the specific country that you're considering taking metals from and to, or having them shipped from and to. The best thing to do is to try to search for the particular rules of the country that you're going to be entering. And usually there are rules related to the purity of metals coming into the country. And there's quantity limits in some countries and others not so, but it has to be declared, etc. Taxes often apply. Sometimes you don't find out about those until after the fact. That can be tricky. It's a very challenging proposition, and there are some companies who specialize more in that. So that's just my suggestion. Kaiser, I don't know if you have anything to add other than it is worth doing your diligence and doing the searching because the rules can be complex.
yeah, that's certainly true. And there's a lot of yes, there's complexity to the rules that a lot of times doesn't immediately necessarily even make sense. And from country to country, even sometimes, within the same country, the rules can seem to be contradictory. I mean, even in here in the United States, we have places that even though in the Constitution that we have precious metals like silver still recognized constitutionally as the way that you make a dollar is with silver. That there's still a handful of states that charge tax on silver sales, and those rules can be strange and arcane and that kind of thing. So it's one worth knowing what the rules are, and probably most of the time it's easier to transact in the country that you're in
Mhm.
at the time, rather than trying to move metals one way or the other and be subject to a VAT.
One example that can work well for people is if they are traveling between countries, is to take a reasonable amount of physical precious metals. Gold in particular is small and compact, easy to take along with you as long as you declare it on the entry, the customs entry form into the country that you're entering, and it stays with you. It's less likely, especially if it's a country that's not known for having corrupt border guards, you have to make your own judgment about that, that you're likely to end up with it. There may be a tax on it, or in many cases there's not. You just have to declare it. But there are limits in some cases. So do your checking ahead of time, find out what the limits are. And if you are going to be traveling, you can often bring gold with you as long as you declare it when you're entering the country. And there's been quite a bit of controversy around the question because Andy Schectman has told the story several times about traveling from Canada to the U.S., bringing a large number of Canadian silver maple leaf, gold maple leaf coins, declaring them at face value because they're legal tender, etc. There's been some challenges around that, and it may not work as well now as it perhaps did back when he experienced that because they can be deemed to be collectibles by the border guards, in which case then you're looking at the market value of the gold rather than the face value of the legal tender coin. So it can be complicated. So as Kaiser said, sometimes it's just simpler to purchase it in the country where you reside than try to overcome some of these hurdles of bringing it in or having it shipped in. But it's worth looking into. And
Yeah, and sorry,
go ahead.
one last thing to add to that because we have Alan Ritter, mentioning here, come, buy the gold eagle that have a value of $50, bring them home, and then Vita Blanca asking, but does customs value gold, silver coins at face value or market value? And that's the thing is sometimes it's not clear, and a lot is left up to discretion of the person who claims the most authority at that moment. And so that's a question that you have to ask yourself of how deep into that do you want to wade, and
Mhm.
whether or not that's a fight you want to fight, or just find a simpler way to do it.
Mhm. We've got another question here. What are your thoughts in regards to the great taking? If I'm holding physical gold in my IRA, will they be able to take the gold held in a third-party vault? Best state for that vault. So there's several questions there. I guess the first question is about the great taking. For those who aren't familiar with it, there was a book written about a year ago by David Rogers Webb called The Great Taking. It's actually available for free online. If you just search The Great Taking, you'll find it. You can download it in PDF form. It's a sobering expose of the uncomfortable truth that over the past several decades, all of the laws in most of the countries around the world have been changed, sometimes gradually, sometimes sweepingly, to redefine ownership so that the legal title to, for example, stocks and bonds that you hold in your brokerage account or other types of investments are no longer your legal property, your legal title, but you're just a beneficial party. They're held in the name of a clearing company, and the legal interpretation of that is that if things go sideways, the brokerages or these clearinghouses can just take possession, and they have ownership of the actual shares, meaning the underlying ownership of portions of those companies, et cetera, all those assets that those companies have. You can take that as way down the rabbit hole of all the factories, all the inventory, all the everything that those companies own, their cash, et cetera. Uh, and you're left out there in the cold with a share that's been leased away basically to someone else. He makes the analogy that if you buy a car from a car dealer and you drive it home, and then the car dealer says, "Ah, guess what? Times have gotten hard. We leased your car to someone else. We're going to repossess it, and it's gone." So it's a very sobering expose, and we are in negotiations with David Rogers Webb to come on our channel. We're just trying to get on his calendar at the right date. We'll get you more questions answered there, but there's more parts to that question about physical metal, precious metals IRAs. There's another question about IRAs down below from Alan. What are the fees if someone wants to open a gold IRA? How long does it take? So let's maybe just kind of try to hit those in rapid fire. And if you have more questions about precious metals IRAs, let's go ahead and get them. So yes, within the laws of in the United States, you can open up a self-directed physical precious metals IRA, but there's two clarifications that have been made in the recent years, which were not as clear a few years ago. One is that you need to be using a custodian company that does that as their business. That's not. Oh, for one thing, the clarification is you can't store that gold at home. For a while there was this concept of a home storage IRA that's been tested in some court cases and stricken down by the IRS. So saying that that's not considered enough of an arm's length relationship because the IRA is a separate party, legal person. It can't be you in your own possession having your metals. You have to be under vault storage, professional vault storage, and under the supervision of an custodian company. But yeah, there are several companies that do custodian services for physical precious metals IRA, and there are many vaults that they work with. Each of them works with maybe half a dozen. They have a short list typically of vaults that they work with, and yes, you can set that up and you can roll over from an existing IRA. You can roll over from a previous employer's 401k if you no longer work for that employer into a physical precious metals IRA. And then when it comes time for distributions, you can either take your distributions in cash or in kind. If it's in kind, that means they'll actually ship you your metals when it's time to take distributions from your IRA. There's a lot of benefits to that. Lots of things to learn. Like, do you want to go with a traditional IRA where you defer the taxes? Or do you want to go with a Roth IRA where you pay your taxes up front, but then you avoid future capital gains taxes on nominal growth within the IRA? Where you want to store it? That's the question. There's some states that may be better than others. People are generally favoring states that have come on strong in the leadership. It's a big movement of the states, the sound money movement. If you go to soundmoney.org, you'll see which states are leading the charge. We've spoken with the Missouri Freedom Initiative here several times about that. North Dakota is one, Texas is one. Generally, a lot of the western states are leading in that as far as making sure that there's privacy and separation from federal overreach. For example, North Dakota, for one, we've been told by Bill Holter, who we've interviewed here, is unique among the states in that it's basically opting out of the Federal Reserve System. So it has its own bank charter. Texas has their own state depository. That's a big deal. If you go to one of the vaults that we have shown on our show here, the Dakota Depository, they have their website, dakotadepository.com, and look at their position statement on protecting property rights and privacy and resisting unconstitutional actions or edicts from the government. It's quite encouraging. Kaiser, did you have anything else to add on that?
The I mean, that was a pretty extensive summary. If you want to know more about a precious metals IRA or see if it's something that's a good fit for you, you can email us. Just put IRA info in the subject line and email libertyandfinance@protonmail.com. That's libertyandfinance@protonmail.com. And we'll do a quick review of what Dunnigan just talked about here and give you some ideas of where you could look for a custodian and how that process works. Because yeah, like Dunnigan mentioned, there's basically three outside parties involved in having a precious metals IRA. You've got a custodian who makes sure you're dotting your I's and crossing your T's per the IRS regulations. You've got a depository who's holding the metals for you, and then you have your broker, and in that case, that's someone like us who handles actually transacting in gold and silver for you. Because there are rules about what can go in an IRA and what can't, and that kind of thing. The other thing that was mentioned was this question of what happens. Can the government come get my gold if there's in a great taking scenario? And I think certainly, I mean, an IRA is a government subsidized account, right? And the so I think the question is, so we certainly have clients who go, you know what, I really want Uncle Sam's fingers off of my
Mhm.
precious metals. And they go, I'm going to pay the taxes, I'm going to pay the penalties, I'm taking everything out of my IRA, and I am going to hold stuff at my own house and that kind of thing. And they take all their money out of their IRA and they invest it separately. But I think more often the general question that I think is best to answer when you're asking that other question of can the government take my funds is maybe so. Would you rather have intangible assets like a money market account, stocks and bonds, stuff that is digitally managed and digitally traded and that kind of thing, or would you rather make it a little bit more difficult and have it actual physical stuff that someone would have to go get? And I think that's the question is, look, it's if you have a level of security of can stuff be taken away from you of zero for if you're just holding, digital assets that, according to a lot of experts, are essentially you or leased to you,
Mhm.
not actually your property, versus on the far other end of the spectrum of having stuff that nobody else knows about and that's in your private possession. Maybe that's the far other end of security. Um, Having an IRA is going to put you towards the beginning of that scale because it's something that you're getting a federal government tax benefit from because they're managing it, or there's a third party managing it that is working with the federal government and
Mhm.
playing by their rules. So you're going to be more towards the insecure side of that spectrum, but at the same time, you're further up the spectrum if you've got a precious metals IRA than you would be if you've just got a standard one over at, Schwab or Edward Jones or something like
Yeah,
that.
there's a couple different goals that people are trying to solve, I think, sometimes when they consider a precious metals IRA. One of them is inflation protection and hedging against destruction of the value of the currency, and also perhaps against collapse of the markets if there was a market crash, that kind of thing. They want to have their chips off the table and outside that. So in that case, having physical tangible assets that are in your IRA account at least you've got an inflation protection there. You're not in the banking system. However, you're right. It's a system that is all the rules are written by the government. The rules can be changed by the government. Certainly, there's been talk like during the Obama presidency when he was talking about MIRAs, saying that there's been talk about nationalizing IRAs or saying that you have a certain portion of them needs to be in government bonds or that sort of thing. So that's where you're going when some of our clients who are wary of the potential for rule changes or that sort of thing from the government would rather hold the metals in their own private possession. So privacy is a different goal, and privacy is something that you don't really get when you're in a IRA of any kind because they are all custodians have to be transparent and report to the IRS sort of thing. So there's another part of the question that Alan asked, and that's about fees. Every custodian that does the supervising of the paperwork and all that has to have fees so that they can pay their staff to do that. So there's typically a fee to open an account called an initiation or origination fee. Those vary between like $150 to $220, something like that. Then there's sometimes an annual maintenance fee. Sometimes that's like $75 or so. And then there's even a per transaction fee for if you buy metals or sell metals or swap metals. Usually that's around 40 or 50 or so dollars. All of those are subject to change, and they vary between different custodians. Some are cheaper to get initiated, some charge more on an annual basis, et cetera. But there are fees. And then there's the storage fees that the vaults charge. Usually that's the lowest rate that they offer, though it's a good rate because they deal in bulk with these custodians who bring them, hundreds of clients. So it's usually a small fraction of a percent per year, like zero point 0.2 or zero point 0.3, or maybe as high as 0.5% per year of the value of the metals on storage in that case, which is usually a lower rate than you can get for a allocated, segregated, and audited account at most vaults with a private account. So something to think about. It does bring the benefit of someone else is guarding your stuff, so you don't have to guard it yourself. But it does not check all the boxes of privacy. So if privacy and the other point of deferring taxes to the future is one of the reasons that people get into an IRA in the first place is that I don't want the tax burden this year. Oh, I can't afford the taxes this year. I'll push that off to the future. So they're betting basically that their tax rate may be less burdensome in the future, or that they're hoping for tax deferred growth. Um, it's a challenging question to answer because, as we've talked with lots of our guests, Michael Pinto, active money manager, Alistair McLeod, former bank director, et cetera, the debt trap that our country and most countries find themselves in means they're much more likely to be desperate in the future to try to balance their books. I mean, already we've had the first 2 years of the United States' fiscal 2025 started in the fall, and it was the worst 2 years from a deficit standpoint that has ever been in the history of our country. We're racking up additional deficit of like $1 trillion every 100 days. So It's a debt trap, a debt spiral, as Alistair refers to it, and it's more likely from past history lessons that countries that get caught in a debt trap, especially in a rising interest rate environment that they can't get out of in inflationary times, um, may resort to higher tax rates in the future. So if you want to bet that they won't, then maybe deferring your taxes to the future is a good bet. If you don't trust that the government might not raise taxes on you in the future, then might want to take your lumps now, get your privacy back, and get your metals privately. There's no one right answer. There are several trade-offs, and it's a very good question.
There's a couple of questions that I think can kind of play well together. One was I missed who was asking it, but they were. Mark says, "Do you deal with numismatics?" And the other question was John says, "During the Silicon Valley bank collapse, what were premiums over spot price versus now? Next bank bailout, I think history will repeat itself." And the reason I think those two are related is because right now what we're looking at in regards to premiums both on just bullion, sovereign coins, and numismatics are at as low or the lowest that we've seen in the last 4 years or so. Back in the Silicon Valley bank collapse in March of last year, we saw Eagles go up to 1550 over spot. We were selling them at 1550 over spot. Most everybody else was selling them 17, 18, $19.
Silver Eagles, yeah,
Silver
gold
Eagles,
Eagles were
excuse me.
$195 over spot. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they topped at around 235 over
Oh, that's
spot.
true. That's true.
And then, now they're down anywhere. We've had even a couple of dips where we've been able to get backdated Eagles for like around $100 over spot. And then especially if you look at where spot price is at as if you look at the premium then as a factor of the total cost of the coin, that's, it's 5% or something of the total cost of the coin as opposed to, when spot price was at 1800 and the premium was 235, you're looking at a 12% premium or something there. And similarly with numismatics, we've a year and a half ago they were uh the premiums were in the like 20 to 30% range for MS62 Liberties or MS62 St. Gaudens. Now they're ranging like 2.5 to 5% on those. I mean, there you can get, I think, if I'm not mistaken, you can get we'll sell you MS62 Liberties for right around the cost, or actually maybe I think even a little bit lower than the cost of an Eagle right now. And that's I know Andy Schechtman has mentioned that as a metric of is this a buy time or a sell time for numismatics?
Mhm.
Is can you get an MS62 Liberty for about the same cost as an Eagle? And right now
Mhm.
you actually get it for significantly better than that. So.
Yeah, this is really interesting. People need to understand, in addition to the spot price that we all kind of are aware of that changes with market conditions, there's the premium over spot that that modern bullion coins are subject to. That's basically driven by physical supply and demand imbalance. And when there's a rush into things like when junk silver was in high demand and short supply, when during the Ukraine invasion, during the COVID crash, during the bank failures. Those are the three big events that happened all in the last few years. The physical demand went way up, so the premiums were imbalanced with the supply, and the premiums went way up. But there's a separate wave for numismatic premiums rather than modern bullion, and it has a life of its own. And I had an interview set up. There's a rather famous dealer that is very prominent on the independent media space that often uh, pitches the virtues of numismatic coins. And I'm not going to mention who it is, but I would just say that the clients I've had who've gone to actual seminars or sales meetings or strategy planning meetings with that dealer have come away reported to me, feeling very pressured to go heavy into numismatics. What they weren't told during that is that the prices that they're being offered for those numismatics is much higher than the competitive going rate for semi-numismatics. So The other thing is I had scheduled a three-way debate between a representative from that company on Liberty and Finance and another seller by the name of Sanders, who said he was going to his website is the Money Changer, and he was going to present the case against numismatic coins, which I thought was intriguing. Let's have a vigorous debate about it. On the day of, I was only able to get one of those parties to show up, so uh, I got the Money Changer came on. He presented a discussion of the case against numismatic coins. I just put a link to it in the live chat. It's fascinating because what he did was he showed this cyclical nature of the numismatic premium above the spot price and how it tends to vary dramatically over time. And you could look at that as the case against numismatics. I think what he was really coming down to, and we finally reached at the end of the discussion, was it's a case against overpaying for numismatics. Don't buy into numismatics or semi-numismatic coins when the premium is extremely relative to modern bullion. But when that tide goes out and the premium, then they all converge, and you can get them for the same price or sometimes even less than modern bullion coins, then that might be a opportunity. That's what Andy has talked about is when you see these ratios, people talk about the gold silver ratio. That's another one. This is another one of those ratios. It's a ratio of the price of pre-33 gold coins to modern bullion coins, and it varies. It has a cycle to it. Right now, we're at a remarkable low in that cost for numismatic or semi-numismatic pre-33 coins. The other thing, just to be cautious about when talking about pre-33 coins, is dealers who will make a strong pitch that this protects you from government confiscation. The government can't take away your gold if you buy these. That's why they are worth paying more for, because the government can't take them away. And that claim is largely based on the 1933 exceptions in the executive order that FDR, Franklin Delano Roosevelt, issued when he was nationalizing the gold money supply and telling people they had to turn in their gold coins in exchange for paper dollars. Was that they made exceptions for jewelers and dentists and collectors. And so he says, well, if the majority of the value of your coins is collectible value, then you're a collector. You're not just a stacker. So you don't have to break up your collection because the government said so, because FDR put that as an exception in this executive order. Well, that was over 90 years ago, and anybody who's been through the last 4 years, I think, has learned that you can't expect that the government won't change their rules if they want to. You can't say, "Hey, you said 90 years ago that there was an exception, and I'm going to hold you to it." So I would just say be cautious of sales pitches that come on strong, trying to upsell you high-priced graded coins, saying, "Well, government says those are protected from inflation. See, it says right here in black and white." So anyway, yes, you that may be helpful to actually have a variety of different sizes and grades and ages and so on, so that you have a collection and not just a stack. That may help in terms of if the government ever did want to seize people's gold again. But Andy Scheckman has said several times on our show when that question has come up, he said, look, if the government wanted to get a lot of gold in a hurry, and some governments are doing that all around the world, all they'd have to do on a weekend is nationalize some of the largest exchange traded gold funds like GLD and say, as in the fine print of your prospectus, we're paying you out fairly in cash, and you'll have cash Monday morning, and then without ever directly taking anybody's physical metals out of their pockets or out of their homes or out of their private vault accounts, they could end up with a lot of gold, perhaps a majority of stored gold in a real hurry over a weekend without even breaking a sweat. So uh, just realize that probably that's why one of the reasons it's not a good idea to think that you actually own gold if you own those exchange traded funds, but also that if you really want to have privacy with your gold, buy it personally, have it delivered to you directly, store it privately, etc., or in a private vault account, etc. So those are some additional thoughts to consider. But yeah, right now is an extraordinary time for low, low, low premiums on pre-33 gold. I had one client describe it that she was looking at a chart of all of these the prices of like the higher grades, and they're converging because as the numismatic premiums drop, as they have been, those lines all tend to converge down closer and closer to each other.
Yeah,
Also
I mean,
important,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
just to say one more thing, just a little important thing is that because the coins at the pre-33 were minted the way they were, they don't contain a full troy ounce of gold. The $20 gold coin was worth officially $20.67. It contains 0.9675 ounces of gold, and the $10 coin is exactly half of that at 0.48375, and the $5 coins are exactly half of that, so at 0.24 la la la. So so there's a 3.25% difference just right off the bat. It's not comparing apples to apples. So if you're comparing a $20 gold Liberty or gold St. Gaudens coin, it looks almost the size of a 1 ounce gold eagle, but it's 3.25% less gold in there. So by rights, from a gold standpoint, it should cost 3.25% less. So when we say, gee, they're really amazing because they're almost the same price or even a little bit lower, be aware the melt value of one of the old $20 gold coins is 3.25% less gold than a modern 1 ounce gold eagle or gold buffalo. So just be aware of that when you're doing your figuring and deciding whether you're getting a stealing, screaming deal or not, is that you're getting 3.25% less gold. Now, that's close enough that most people, for round figuring and everything, just kind of treat them like they're all 1 ounce coins. But that's can be an important distinction because 3.25% at $2,700 gold is almost $100. So yeah.
Yeah, and I was just gonna mention that too, is that yeah, I mentioned, oh, you can get a MS-62 for almost the same, for a little bit less than an Eagle. Even MS-63s and some MS-64s are right in there, and usually by the time you get to MS-64, it's like forget about it. I'm not even interested in paying that much for it. But right now they're actually pretty close, and it's the MS-65s and 66s are getting into the oh, well, forget about it range. But but those are it's shockingly close compared to what we've seen over the last few years. Wanted to thank Daryl and Alan for the kind words, and Matt, let's thank you for the support. And I see the question: if the euro fails in the next decade, will Australian Philharmonics still be considered sovereign coins? If they're denominated in euros in the future, will they just be considered silver rounds? Um, and I mean, it's an interesting question, one that I don't know that can't have a crystal ball into exactly what would happen. But there's a similar question that arises with if the dollar was reset or failed, and I mean those are I think two of the bigger ones that people are interested in talking about. But sorry, Dunnigan, you looked like you had something to jump in on that.
Oh, just that one of the benefits that people believe, and I think it's true, about sovereign minted, government minted coins is that there's, as Bill Holter calls it, there you know the mint lineage, you know where it came from, you know where it was born. There's one source to point to and say that's where it came from. So rather than say if you own buffalo rounds, silver rounds, they're beautiful. They're shiny. They come from many different. It's a non-copyrighted design. It can be made by any private mint, so it's less definitive in an era. If we're entering an era of reduced trust, where more people are going to be distrusting more things, heaven forbid Mad Max or anything even close to it. But in an era of reduced trust, it's helpful to know where something came from. So even now, if you had a British sovereign or a French rooster gold coin or whatever, you know it came from the government mint at that time and was under some controls and supervisions and so on. Even in the Constitution and the Coinage Act of 1792, the government mints are there to provide standardization, standard weights and measures. It's part of the commerce function of the mint is to provide standard sized and standard purity and label them accordingly so that there isn't this random uncertainty on everyone's mind. I don't know if I trust that. I don't know how pure it is. Is it weight? Does it have the correct weight? Does it have the right correct purity? So even if the euro goes belly up, and it may, according to Alistair MacLeod, it doesn't change the fact that those Austrian Philharmonics were minted by the Austrian Royal Mint and was is a controlled known source at the time. So that was my 2 cents. Sorry, it took me a long time to
Yeah,
say.
no, that's fine. I think that's a really it's really worth pointing out, like if you are purchasing a piece of a manufactured good or a car or something like that, even if I'm trying to think of a perfect example, but you go, well, Austrian made, German made. That's that's going to be a high quality thing versus it's made in who knows where and with what controls. And so the value of the sovereign coin isn't the fact that it's got face value,
Hmm.
which there's not a single sovereign coin minted out there from any of the six major mints that is only worth the face value that it has. They're all worth significantly more than their face value. So the um,
Hmm.
the value of it is not in the face value. It's in the fact that you know who made it and whether that whether that currency or whether that government continues to exist.
Hmm.
You know that it existed at the time when it was made, and you know what kind of strictures and controls were put in place around that and what that meant at the time.
And some government mints have by far better uh, engraving equipment. The Canadian Royal Mint is remarkable for their precision of their micro engraving, et cetera, to try to prevent counterfeiting and that sort of thing and knockoffs, because it's quite likely. And some people you've already seen these. If you haven't, it's just distressing to see if you just do a search like on eBay or somewhere for like American Silver Eagles, you'll see shops that are selling monster boxes of American Silver Eagles for like $1,000 or $5,000. Impossibly, too good to be true prices. And unfortunately, some of the ones that some people have purchased, they think they're purchasing the real thing, but actually it's just clad with silver or it doesn't even have any silver or it's a knockoff of one kind or another. You know that happens with designer Gucci purses and everything else, and Rolex watches and everything else. Well, it also happens with gold and silver coins and bars. The most attractive target for forgers is something that's high value and easy to fake. So gold bars check both of those boxes. So like 10-ounce or kilogram size gold bars is a ton of value in a single thing, and it can be pretty simple design, not a lot of detailed engraving or everything. Whereas like a 1-ounce silver maple leaf coin is has much less attractiveness to a forger because they have much less they can sell them for so much less, and the Canadian government can afford such high precision engraving that many forgers can't fake it very well. So that's another attribute of typically like government minted coins that will remain even after even if the country goes bust or their currency goes bust, the precision with which that's what you made me think of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And actually, that brought up one other thing in my mind recently. So I've had client calls and people looking to get into gold for the first time or that kind of thing, and going, well, I'll just do bars. I'll just get bars because they're, I know they're
Cheaper.
going to be cheaper and that kind
Yeah.
of thing. And I mean, we're talking about there's maybe a 0.2% difference in overall cost between a bar and a Krugerrand or even a maple or any of these sovereign coins. So that's something I mentioned to all of my clients who call is absolutely when it comes to gold coins, get the coin right now because it is so close in premium that there's no point in getting a bar. And not to knock bars, there's lots of great mints out there.
Mhm.
Canadian Mint makes some bars, and I have some RCM bars from when premiums were wildly divergent.
Mhm.
They're not right now. They're so close. Get the really good stuff, and it's not going to cost you. It's going to cost you 5-10 cents more, $5-10 more an ounce. Not a big deal. So that's my soapbox there.
Just to add a little bit of color to that, if there's a reason that you really want a gold bar or a silver bar, it's not a bad idea. I mean, I've had clients who like they were buying a gift for a retirement party gala for a coworker, and he got him a kilogram silver bar. Like the even the Valcambi ones are inexpensive. They're gorgeous. They're
Yeah.
beautiful. and it's eye-catching. It was the talk of the gifts that this guy received. So anyway,
Yeah.
if there's a reason you really want the heft and everything of a gold or silver bar, that's fine. Make sure you get it from a reputable source and get the documentation that comes with it to prove it's legit. We have a question from Samsung Apple. With fewer people buying and more people selling, will the price go down for as far as over spot on gold eagles, gold buffaloes, and silver eagles? That's been the trend. We mentioned in the past 3 or 4 years, we've had, the COVID crash when the whole world's economy were shutting down. We've had the invasion of Ukraine. We've had multiple bank failures in the U.S., and we've had runaway debts and deficits in the U.S. A lot of those things are still going on. The Ukraine war hasn't ended. The banks are at perhaps as much risk with their underwater bond portfolios and underwater commercial loan portfolios. They've been kind of packaged up and promised back at face value by the from the Fed or those who are packaging up as collateralized debt obligations and so on. But according to former bank director Alistair McLeod, the banking crisis is not even really started in earnest yet. And we've revealed some of the behind the scenes FDIC meetings saying we know there are going to be bank runs, and we shouldn't tell the public this because there could be unintended consequences if people got too concerned. But we better inform the people at the right level of the food chain who need to make the appropriate plans, et cetera. So just to say that a lot of those drivers, we've just kind of gotten like the frog in the boiling water. We're just getting used to living at a higher compounded risk level. But as Andy says, we're one bailout away or one major event away from a return to the awakening on the part of more of the public that they don't own anything real. So just to say it's tough to know how long this environment will persist of low premiums, but it's certainly true, Samsung, Apple, that in a time where people are hurting financially and they're having to make their tax payments, et cetera, a lot of people, more than, as Kaiser, you've pointed out in previous Ask the Broker sessions recently, more of our percentage of our sales recently have been buying back from clients than normal. Usually it's about 5%, maybe 2 to 5% of our orders were buybacks. Now it's some days that's all I have is 3 or 4 or 5 buybacks.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's an even mix with buybacks and sales. So it's a time when that is the phenomenon that's going on right now. And part of that happened after the Trump election. There was a expectation on many people's part of, oh, we've solved the problems now. Now it's back to good times again. And yet any of the structural problems of the debt and the deficits are remaining. And it yet to be seen if he enacts the tariff and the punitive excise taxes and that sort of thing that he's talking about in different countries, what that will do to prices, et cetera, inflation, and off to the races again we go in terms of whether there needs to be interest rate raises, et cetera, that would further damage the bond portfolios of the banks and the insurance companies and so on. So it'll be a very interesting time. 2025 proves to be very interesting, or promises to be going forward. So it's hard to predict if these low premiums will persist. But if you've been waiting for a time when there are low premiums, this is one of them.
Yeah. Matt Liss had a follow-up question. With regards to the Philharmonic, some IRA plans will allow you to keep them along with other sovereign coins. Will this
Oh, sure.
arrangement change? So right now, the IRA rules are such that you can keep anything as long as the fineness is 3 nines fine for gold, silver, or 995 for platinum. It can be a sovereign coin. It can be generic bar as long as the fineness is appropriate. So all the sovereign coins except for the Krugerrand are eligible, the gold Krugerrand, excuse me, and the American Eagle, though it doesn't meet those fineness standards, it's an American coin. IRA is an American account, so they let her down. But
Also,
you,
just one little
oh, sure.
modifier there is that there's an additional stipulation about COMEX approved refiners. So, um,
Yes, that's true.
y-
Sorry. Yeah.
yeah, okay,
Yeah, or some case, COMEX or LBMA, depending on
yep.
where the where it's made. And so, yeah, generally, if you can't just send in your own, bar that you've melted down and say, that's 3 nines fine. But the Philharmonics, per current rules, it wouldn't matter if they were a sovereign coin or if they were not. It's just has to do with the purity and again the lineage of the mint that it's coming from, an LBMA or a COMEX approved refiner. And so that's, maples are allowed. Silver Krugerrands are allowed because those are three nines fine purity. But you can, things made by the Royal Canadian Mint that don't have a face value. A lot of other ones, we've had. Even mints that a lot of people have never heard of are, if they're approved, then you can have them in there. We had JBR refining, I think, some
Hmm.
that and ones that are much, I would say, lesser known mints than ones
Hmm.
like Engelhard or Scottsdale Mint or stuff like that, and
Hmm.
they can still go fine in an IRA. So the sovereignty of the mint is not part of the the algorithm right now. So.
Yep. Yeah, there are some other coins that are not IRA eligible, such as, well, because of its purity, the South African Krugerrand, for example, is not IRA eligible. Junk silver, even though it comes from the US Mint, is only 90% silver, therefore it doesn't meet the purity standard, therefore it's not IRA eligible. If you would like to have a list of the coins that are IRA eligible or not, just write IRA in an email and send it to libertyandfinance@protonmail.com. libertyandfinance@protonmail.com. We'll send you the list. It's pretty interesting.
Mhm.
Let's see. There was a question there from, I answered it in the text, but this is from John McDowell. Says, when will Andy have his website up for online sales? So Miles Franklin has had an online website up now for several months. It is limited currently to sales under $10,000, and the prices you'll see on there are not as low as you can get from the brokers that work with Miles Franklin, such as our team here at Liberty and Finance. So if you want no restrictions on the size of your order and you want full access to our latest online inventory that we can access and able to ask questions and even get better prices, give us a call at 888-81-LIBERTY. We'll help you out. Let's see. Welchco Services, a good reminder to all. Just because you know does not mean everyone is going to find out tomorrow. Yeah, yeah, it's remarkable how many people are still getting incomplete information or information that's more appropriate to the last 40 years of a decreasing interest rate environment than perhaps the next year or 5 or 10 or 40 that we're expecting. So it's going to be an interesting time. And unfortunately, that's one of the reasons we started Reluctant Preppers and eventually Liberty and Finance back in 2013 was to make sure that we had an independent source of news you're not going to find on the financial news that you need to know to protect your family. Anything else on here that we are ready to
There were
answer?
um Off-Grid Princess had a couple of questions here in regards to if the dollar were to crash or fail, would she said, will the dollar crash when the actual real gold and silver prices return to their fundamental value without price manipulation? Or if the dollar failed, would silver and gold prices be able to be manipulated?
Those
Um,
are that, but especially that second one. Well, they're both fascinating questions. I would like to leverage the first part of the question, Off-Grid Princess, when we say, "Will the dollar crash?" If you zoom out to the like a century long view from 1913 when the Federal Reserve was founded, and there was before that there was no, for example, no personal income tax, and the value of a 1 ounce gold coin was $20.67, and now, so in other words, it took a stack of 21 paper dollars to buy a 1 ounce gold coin back in 1913. Today, it takes a stack of $2,700 to buy a 1 ounce gold coin. You're asking, when is the dollar going to crash? It's already lost over 99% of its value when measured against gold over the last century. And since the beginning of the COVID era, if you've seen the hockey stick of the currency supply, the M1 money supply uh, put out by the Fed, It's been remarkable. It's unprecedented in the history of our country. Uh, how many more dollars have been created just in the last 4 years with nothing to back them. So most people would say the dollar is already crashing. It's crashing right before our eyes. We get lied to a lot about it. They say the official target is 2% inflation. Oh, can't achieve that. We're at 3.6% or whatever. Whereas John Williams from shadowstats.com says actually, if you measure it the way they started when they've been measuring it since 1980, it's going up at 8 to 12 to 14% per year inflation. So that means the destruction of the value of the currency. So the dollar is crashing right now in front of our eyes. It has been for a century. It's speeding up. It's crashing faster. And the question is, uh, for most people who aren't aware of that, that's actually draining the value right out of their savings, their earnings, their retirements, etc. Um, the will actual real gold and silver prices return to their fundamental value without price manipulation? It's hoped by many who point out that over the long haul, over long periods of time, centuries and thousands of years, that the value of gold and silver tend to just maintain and hold their value. Things that you could buy back in the Roman era or 100 years ago or 40 years ago with a gold or silver coin, you can still buy with a gold or silver coin, sometimes more. And in cases where people are just waking up to the risk of holding dollars or being in the banking system or being in the stock market, and there's a rush, like it's like when all those college kids would try to cram into a phone booth. If everybody tries to cram into the very small market of physical gold and silver, it can distort and go way beyond just holding its steady value. But there can be a remarkable. There's lots of examples from history when there was a inflationary devaluation of the currency that people who had physical gold and silver were able to not just maintain their lifestyle, but do a lot better and have opportunities that others didn't have. So um, at least you expect it to hold its purchasing power. I like have a personal anecdote. Others can share theirs. Please do in the chat. When I was a kid in 1968, my family went on a trip of the Western U.S. and we were there was a gas price war going on in the coast of Texas along the Gulf of Mexico there, where we would all spy lower and lower and lower gas prices. My dad kept telling us to shout out when we saw a lower gas price. 19.9 was the lowest price that I was the one who saw it. 19.9 cents, which is 2 dimes at the time. And 2 silver dimes can still more than pay for a gallon of gas. So gold and silver hold their prices while the dollar is crashing right before our eyes. So that's the fundamental value of gold and silver in terms of oil, in terms of houses, in terms of food, in terms of services, clothing, etc., tends to be stable over time.
I think
Anybody
we're
else?
I think we're largely have answered most of the questions on there. I know we've been at it for 45 minutes or so here.
Oh gosh, oh my gosh, we gotta be done. John McDowell, quick answer. DKU and Andy have made a previous vids from Fargo showing a large box of sterling silver, maybe, and melting it. Do you buy scrap silver? Yes,
Yep.
we can. The challenge with buying scrap silver is it's difficult sometimes for the client to accurately quantify the purity and everything ahead of time. But if you what we do is when we receive it, we melt it down, we assay the melt, and we measure the purity, and we can pay you out accordingly. So we can give you an approximate bid based on an assumed purity, but the actual purity will be determined once we actually get a chance to have eyes on and assay the silver that we receive from you. But yes. So, well, let's see. Any of these topics we've talked about, don't hesitate to email us. We'll be happy to send you information. If you put the words IRA in the title of an email to libertyandfinance@protonmail.com, we're happy to send you that. If you put, let's see, vault in the title of an email, we can send you information about storage. Just email us at libertyandfinance@protonmail.com. Um,
Yeah, I'd say that's yeah, I think that
so
covers it.
Yeah, so we didn't touch on our weekly specials. They're the same ones as last week. Junk silver, dimes and quarters at $1.69 over spot. Canadian gold maple leafs backdated for $59 over spot on
Which
gold.
is Also, that's worth mentioning is
It's crazy low. I've never seen them that low.
I don't think we've ever seen them that low.
Yeah.
So that's
And
yeah.
also an exclusive, the the uh,
Canadian
the
Mint one ounce
Canadian
Falcon. Their
Falcon
Birds
coin,
of Prey series, which is essentially it's just a maple with a different design because it still has the same face value that a maple does.
four
Uh,
nines purity, 1 troy ounce of pure silver from the Canadian
yeah,
Royal Mint, but $2.75 over spot.
and that's
Lowest premium
certainly
we've
the
seen on a sovereign
on a
minted
sovereign
silver coin.
coin in 4 years.
Yep. So
So
happy to help you. Anyone, give us a call, 888-81-LIBERTY. We're here for you. You can text us, not at that number, but if you call us and get one of our, and our personal numbers are available on our website, libertyandfinance.com. If you aren't on our free mailing list, just go to libertyandfinance.com, put in your email address, click submit, confirm on the confirming email, libertyandfinance.com email, and then we'll get you one email per day with our latest interviews. You won't miss a single thing, and all of our weekly specials are in those daily emails.
yeah,
And Wellco Services says, congratulations on raising great boys, DK. God has blessed our family beyond measure. Thank you very much. And Kaiser, thank you for joining us tonight. Thank you, everyone, for being here and making this a real opportunity to share information. Everyone, please share this video. I think we answered a lot of meaningful questions, and happy to answer any additional ones if you want to write us at libertyandfinance@protonmail.com. Happy to help. Thanks, everyone.